A wealthy California businesswoman was gunned down in broad daylight as part of a murder-for-hire plot, orchestrated by her estranged husband in a bid to get his hands on their assets. Shocking footage shows 44-year-old Yesenia Jessica Torres attempting to run away as a gunman chased her down in the parking lot of a San Bernardino restaurant. The panicked victim could be seen trying to fight back against her assailant before she tried to flee on foot, only to be shot dead during the ambush. Police initially suspected that Torres had been killed in a robbery gone wrong, but they now believe that the shooter was one of 4 men hired by the victim's estranged husband to kill her. The accused gunman, 31-year-old Gerardo Llamas Torres, fled the scene in a getaway car driven by 54-year-old Arnaldo Ruiz. They drove to an abandoned parking lot where they got into a second getaway car driven by Arnaldo's brother, 37-year-old Reynaldo Ruiz. The 3 men were among 5 arrested, which also includes Torres' estranged husband, 53-year-old Sergio Reveles, and Sergio's business partner, 42-year-old Juan Perez. All 5 suspects have pleaded not guilty to murder, robbery, financial gain, and lying in wait. Number 14. Caribbean shark attack. A 55-year-old Canadian woman's vacation in paradise turned into a complete nightmare after losing both her hands to a 7-foot bull shark during a trip to the Turks and Caicos Islands. The shark initially bit the tourist in the thigh during a swim in hip-deep water off Providenciales before charging at her a second time, prompting her to instinctively raise her hands in an effort to protect herself. By the time the woman's husband entered the water and wrestled the shark away, giving her a chance to rush to shore, it had bitten one of her hands off at the wrist and the other at the forearm. She collapsed onto the sand and was rushed to a nearby hospital before being flown back to Canada to undergo additional surgeries. In a statement, the Turks and Caicos government claimed that the woman was attacked while trying to take a selfie with the shark, but this detail remains unconfirmed by her family. Number 13. Yolanda Marodi. A California fire captain was murdered inside her San Diego home, and authorities are searching for her wife, who was conspicuously absent from the scene. 49-year-old Rebecca Beck Marodi was found stabbed to death at around 9 p.m. on February 17th after deputies responded to a reported assault with a deadly weapon at the residence. Authorities have yet to reveal a motive but have identified 53-year-old Yolanda Marodi, also known as Yolanda Olinishak, as the prime suspect in the case. She remains at large, and law enforcement is encouraging anyone with information to come forward and share what they know as the investigation continues. Number 12. Delta plane crash at Toronto. An onlooker watched helplessly as he captured footage of a Delta Airlines plane crashing and flipping on a snow-covered runway at Toronto Pearson Airport as it arrived from Minneapolis. In the video, the plane could be seen leaning to the side, causing a wing to hit the pavement and break off. The man filming descended into an audible panic as the plane burst into flames and rolled. By the time the aircraft came to a stop, it was completely upside down, leaving the 80 passengers inside shocked and disoriented as a thick plume of black smoke spewed from the plane's back end. 19 people were treated with mostly minor injuries, while 2 individuals remain hospitalized in critical condition. Everyone is expected to survive, and investigators are currently working to determine the cause of the crash and how the plane ended up belly up on the runway. Conditions were reportedly freezing and difficult at the time of the accident, with hundreds of flights having been cancelled in the 2 days prior due to heavy snowfall, but authorities have not specified whether they believe the inclement weather played a role in the wreck. Number 11. Edwin Rivera. While attempting to serve a search warrant at Manhattan Housing Project on Tuesday, February 16th, the NYPD Emergency Services Unit discovered that 34-year-old Edwin Rivera had barricaded himself inside the 6th floor apartment where he was living as a squatter. During the 4-hour-long standoff that ensued, Rivera fired multiple shots through the door. Instead of firing back, the police retreated from the doorway and tried persuading Rivera into surrendering. The negotiations ultimately failed, prompting the team to attempt entry for a second time. Rivera once again fired at the officers, striking one of them in the shoulder. This time, the cops shot back and were able to apprehend the suspect. Described by authorities as a career criminal, Rivera has multiple prior drug and gun-related felony convictions dating as far back as 2009. He was on parole when the standoff occurred and had most recently been arrested 3 months earlier for resisting arrest, which is not a bail-eligible offense in New York State. Rivera remains hospitalized with multiple gunshot injuries, and both he and the officer he shot are expected to make full recoveries. Number 10. Harrison Jones. A Michigan man drove over 700 miles and set fire to a Bensalem, Pennsylvania home after discovering that a man who lived there had recently communicated with his ex-girlfriend. 21-year-old Harrison Jones of Rockford is accused of setting the house ablaze with 6 people and 2 dogs inside. Both dogs died, but all of the human occupants managed to escape, with some household members having no choice but to jump to safety from second-story windows. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's house showed a vehicle pulling up to the residence at around 5 a.m. The driver exited the car and disappeared near the back of the home for more than 10 minutes before running back to his vehicle and speeding off. Roughly 30 seconds later, there was an explosion, and the home quickly became engulfed in flames. Investigators traced the vehicle to Jones and discovered that his ex-girlfriend had been in an online relationship with a man who lived at the home since 2023. Jones is facing a litany of charges, including arson and 6 counts of attempted homicide. Number 9. Oliver Lane. A high-profile British banker's son has landed a sweetheart plea deal after being accused of trying to kill his girlfriend at his Manhattan apartment last August. 26-year-old Ivy League graduate Oliver Lane was originally charged with strangulation, assault, and criminal obstruction of breathing after he allegedly beat and tried to suffocate 25-year-old comedian Sienna Hubert Ross. The incident occurred during an argument over jealousy and cheating suspicions that seemed to go in both directions. Months later, the prosecutor told Hubert Ross that the charges against Lane were being dropped in exchange for his agreement to attend therapy and abide by a restraining order, even though he had allegedly violated it in the past. The decision to let Lane off the hook scot-free also came despite photographic evidence of Hubert Ross's injuries, which left her feeling betrayed and re-victimized. Prosecutors cited a lack of sufficient evidence to prove Hubert Ross had lost consciousness as their reason for dismissing the case. They also expressed fears that the victim's social media posts, which include some jokes of an adult nature, would be used to attack her credibility in the courtroom. Number 8. The murder of Robert Brooks. In a shocking act of violence that was captured on video in December 2024, 43-year-old Robert Brooks was beaten to death by multiple corrections officers while handcuffed. The homicide occurred shortly after Brooks' arrival at Marcy Correctional Facility in Oneida County, New York, where he was serving a 12-year sentence for assault after being transferred from another prison. The officers punched Brooks, grabbed him by the neck and threw him to the floor during the attack, which was reportedly the 3rd beating he had received since arriving at the facility. He died the next day from compression of the neck and blunt force injuries. Out of the 10 guards who were fired from their jobs, 6 are charged with second-degree murder, including Nicholas Anzalone, David Kingsley, Anthony Farina, Christopher Walrath, and Matthew Gallagher. Michael Mashaw, Michael Fisher, and David Walters each face a first-degree manslaughter charge, while a 10th officer faces an evidence tampering charge. At least 6 of the accused were released from custody after each posted a $250,000 bond. Number 7. Latorray Collins. Just days after going through a breakup, a 38-year-old Florida woman stalked her ex relentlessly and shot his female cousin in the face, apparently unaware that the victim was a relative. According to a police report, 38-year-old Latorray Collins had been calling her ex non-stop since the split, and he had stopped answering the phone. After being unable to reach the man, Collins tracked him down at a Jacksonville restaurant and ambushed her ex and his cousin while they were stopped at a red light. She reportedly blocked her ex with her vehicle, then exited her car and began banging on his window. An argument ensued, during which Collins shot 42-year-old Latasha Taylor in the head. Taylor remains hospitalized with critical injuries, while Collins has earned herself free room and board at a Duval County detention facility. She's currently being held in custody on an attempted second-degree murder charge, with bond set at $250,000. Number 6. Mordechai Brafman.
Also issuing stay-away orders against R.P. Rabbi and Yaron Rabbi.
A 27-year-old Jewish man named Mordechai Brafman is facing potential prison time for shooting at 2 men he mistook for Palestinians who were actually a father and son visiting from Israel. According to news reports, Brafman made a U-turn and opened fire on the victim's vehicle at around 9:30 p.m. on Saturday, February 15th, before fleeing the scene in his truck. He was apprehended nearby and taken to the police station, where he said that he had shot and killed 2 Palestinians he had spotted while driving, but both victims survived, one with a gunshot wound to the shoulder and the other with an arm injury from a grazed bullet. Brafman was remanded without bail to the Miami-Dade County Jail, where he's been held on attempted murder charges. His attitude toward the victims stands in stark contrast to his interview with the media in 2023 about an Israeli flag that had been vandalized outside a coffee shop, during which he stated, "I'd like to see more unity for people to fight less with each other and be more together." Number 5. William Clifford. During the early morning hours of February 20th, 73-year-old tugboat operator William Clifford was found dead in the driveway of his Long Island, New York home with a gun lying nearby. Police were called to the ice-slip residence by a passing garbage man who determined that it was too late to save Clifford and dialed 911. While searching Clifford's residence, officers found the murdered body of his wife, 68-year-old Eileen, lying in a pool of blood. She had been fatally shot by her husband, leaving neighbors shocked by the violence that had occurred in their typically quiet community. The Cliffords had been married for a number of years, according to a law enforcement spokesperson, and were well liked by their neighbors. The circumstances that led up to the deadly incident are a mystery. Number 4. Joshua Dotson. With at least 5 homicides under his belt, 24-year-old Joshua Dotson is the self-proclaimed Michael Myers of Tennessee. He fatally shot his first known victim, 18-year-old Divion Parker, in a Memphis parking lot in 2019. Dotson murdered Reginald Anderson and Renita Bennett at a park in May of 2020, and he killed his 7 months pregnant girlfriend, 19-year-old Jamisha Kovson, and her unborn child the following month. According to authorities, Dotson killed Kovson because she knew about his previous murders. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive 51-year terms for the deaths of Kovson and her child before pleading guilty to the other 3 killings, resulting in sentences totaling 159 years. Altogether, Dotson's sentences amount to 261 years. Dotson represented himself during his most recent trial, telling the jury that he referred to himself as a serial killer, while comparing himself to Michael Myers from the Halloween horror films. Much to the community's relief, he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Number 3. Noel Ruiz Mestre. A 50-year-old Florida man originally from Cuba is facing second-degree murder and arson charges after police say he detonated a car bomb while his wife was sitting in the passenger seat. The blast was captured on doorbell camera footage, which appeared to show Noel Ruiz Mestre setting off the homemade explosive during an argument with his wife in the residential Miami suburb of Hialeah. Mestre's wife died in the explosion while Mestre ran home and changed his clothes. He was taken to the emergency room with burns and a self-inflicted wound after calling 911 for help, and will be transferred to jail once he's well enough to leave the hospital. According to police, Mestre's wife tried to get out of the vehicle before the blast but was trapped inside. Her identity has not been released. The couple's marriage was reportedly on the rocks at the time of the murder due to possible infidelity, but authorities have yet to verify these claims. Number 2. Taylor Meyer. 34-year-old Taylor Meyer of Jeffersonville, Indiana, put a lot of thought into surprising his wife, Deborah, with a Paris-themed Valentine's Day date night, but Deborah was apparently less than infused with the carefully planned evening, and she paid for it with her life. Meyer planned the special date after becoming suspicious that Deborah was cheating on him with a co-worker. Hoping to win back his wife's love, Meyer had the couple's 3 kids draw Eiffel Tower pictures for their mother and planned a special dinner, but he got the impression that Deborah just didn't give despite his painstaking efforts to woo her with the Parisian-themed celebration, and bashed her over the head with a bottle of wine before stabbing her dozens of times. Meyer then took a photo of his dead wife's body and sent it to the man he believed she was having an affair with, along with the caption, "Your fault." He pleaded not guilty to a murder charge and will remain in custody until his trial, which is scheduled for July. Number 1. Detroit water main break. At least 400 Detroit households have been displaced after an old water main dating back to the 1930s broke in the southwest part of the city, leaving homes partially submerged in freezing water that has since turned to ice. Emergency personnel rescued an estimated 200 people and at least 12 pets who had been trapped inside their residences by the rising flood, which left vehicles almost completely underwater in some areas. Residents will have to stay in hotels while city workers carry out repairs, which are expected to take 2 weeks, and water supply agencies have agreed to cover damage costs that are not covered by insurance.